Does your BMW's coolant reservoir keep going empty shortly after you fully refilled it? Well, in today's video, I'll be showing you how this product will help you instantly locate any leak in minutes. So the issue that we were having was every time I refilled the expansion tank, I would take the car out on a drive and then I would go back and check and it'd be empty. So troubleshooting this is obvious. The problem is that I have a leak. But the part that's always difficult is locating it. And so I would scan all throughout the cooling system. I'd look through the hoses to see if I could find any leaks or any bursts. I would check for any defective O-rings, maybe a connecting point to the radiator, and nothing. I wasn't able to find the issue. So the cooling system on these vehicles is very vast and intricate. You have hoses that go all throughout the front of the engine bay, all the way back to the firewall, which you can't even really reach. And so when you're troubleshooting the cooling system, you don't want to just pull off random parts and slap in new ones, because this can really start to add up and become expensive. Heck, sometimes it can be as simple as a leaking expansion tank cap that's allowing coolant to bypass and draining out the reservoir. So we don't want to pull off random parts and start replacing it, because that can just be a large waste of time. So now I'll show you how you can find your leak in literal minutes. So first off, this video is not sponsored. This is AC Pro's radiator and cooling system UV dye. And so how you use this is you open up the cap and then you pour this UV dye directly into the expansion tank. And as you guys can see on the rim here, how this UV dye works is it converts your original coolant color to this high contrast green one that's easy to see. And then from there, you grab yourself a UV flashlight and you shine it throughout your engine bay, and you essentially look for wherever the leak is coming from. And it is broad daylight and I'm able to see it with no issues. And the standard blue coolant that's used in these BMWs is extremely hard to see once it dries up. The best you'll get if it's really leaking bad, you'll see these white kind of water spots. But for the most part, if your leak is in a hard to see place where the water can't drip down, it's going to be very hard to find it. And so with the UV dye already poured in, I filled up the rest of the coolant reservoir to its max capacity, and then I turned the engine on to the vehicle and let it idle out to its operating temperature. And you can take the car out on a drive, but I don't recommend it. And then from there, I scanned the entire engine bay and I was immediately able to find my issue. Right underneath the expansion tank is a huge pile of now green coolant. And I originally thought that it was the O-ring right next to it that it could be leaking, but then when I looked over to the left, I was able to see a trail of coolant coming down from the strut wall. And coolant doesn't flow upwards, but now tracing the coolant up, we're easily able to see the expansion tank is leaking from that seam right here. And now after running the engine and finding our coolant leak, I noticed once I turned everything off that there was bubbling in the back of the expansion tank. Now this is very typical. The cooling system usually is actually going to leak when the vehicle is off, because you're expanding all the coolant and making the entire engine hot, and then once you turn off the engine, it's cooling everything off and releasing all that pressure. So that is worth noting. You might find your leak once you actually turn the vehicle off. And although this might look like, how did you not see that sooner? Keep in mind the blue color of the BMW coolant is almost see-through when it's not pooled up. But with this green UV dye, you can obviously see that the coolant is not spilling out of the reservoir, but slowly leaking its way out. And this is a common issue on these BMWs because the reservoir is actually two pieces sandwiched together. You have the top half and then the bottom half, and what you're seeing in that seam in between is basically some type of adhesive that holds them together. But over time, that adhesive wears out, and that's what allows coolant to spill from the expansion tank. But with the help of this UV dye, I was easily able to find the problem in minutes. And so we'll be replacing this probably sometime this week. And for all you true BMW enthusiasts, I know that you enjoy the science part, so I'm going to show you a small demonstration of how this UV dye works. So we went ahead and poured a little bit of blue coolant into this cap, and although this is empty, it still should have some residual dye in there. And so basically what we'll do is pour the blue coolant into the UV dye bottle, and we'll show you how it changes colors immediately. Oh, that was a good pour, but already you can see that even the coolant that kind of hit the bottle around the edge has already turned green. But let's go ahead and put the cap on, and then we'll shake this up, and you guys can see that the coolant has already turned green. This is not an optical illusion from the bottle. It genuinely dyes it so you can easily find your leak. And now if we pour the coolant back out onto the same dish, you can clearly see that your coolant will now be this green color that'll help you locate that leak. and I just thought showing you guys a demonstration would be pretty cool. And now to answer a question that I know you're all probably thinking in the back of your mind, is this safe to use in a BMW's cooling system? It is universal, you will not cause any issues, it's not going to crystallize in your engine internals or do any damage to the water pump or etc. But if you want to be completely safe, feel free to do a full coolant flush on your own, and I should have a video on my channel of that. But I personally haven't noticed any issues temperature wise, and I would kind of just leave it in your system so later down the line you're easily able to find any other coolant leaks that could present themselves. So that's how you use this super cheap but effective UV dye to eliminate all the guesswork and find your coolant leak in minutes. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay in the loop on more helpful videos like this one.